now let us discuss venation. So venation means the arrangement of veins and veinlets in the lamina of the leaf. Alright. So the venation can be of two types. First is reticulate venation and the second is parallel venation. See, reticulate, the term reticulate itself means network. Alright. So in that case, here in reticulate venation, the veins and veinlets, they all will move towards each other and form a network-like arrangement. Alright. So see, reticulate means network-like, and also it is mostly found in the dicots. Okay, reticulate venation is common in the dicots. Now, the next one is parallel venation. As the name itself suggests, here the veins and veinlets, they won't be running into each other to form a network. Rather, they would be running parallel to one another. Hence, parallel venation, and it's very common in the monocots. Now, they have various subcategories under them. Let us discuss them also along with examples. First, about reticulate venation. Reticulate venation can be of two types again, pinnate or unicostate reticulate and palmate or multicostate reticulate. Alright. Unicosta, see here, uni and costa. Uni means one and costa means midrib. So in that case here, the leaves will show reticulate venation and they would possess a single midrib. Okay, that's why pinnate or unicostate. So this kind of a leaf is seen in banyan or peepal where there is a one single prominent midrib from where the veins and veinlets are running out and they are all forming a network-like arrangement. In case of palmate or multicostate, multi means many, costa means midrib. So here there will be reticulate venation, but then the leaves will possess multiple midribs. Like this. See, this again can be of two types. In case the midribs, the multiple midribs that are present in the lamina, they run towards each other as if they are all moving towards each other. That would be termed as convergent type of multicostate reticulate venation. Alright, example will be Ziziphus, that is bear. Okay, commonly in the local language in Hindi we call it bear. Next is divergent. Divergent means the multiple midribs here will be running away from each other. So these are the midribs. These midribs are of course running away from each other, right? And they are all going to form, again veins and veinlets are going to form reticulate venation. Example is Luffa. In the very similar way, we have certain subcategories under parallel venation as well. So first, pinnate and unicostate parallel. Here everything will be similar to this, but then the venation is going to be parallel. The veins and veinlets will be parallelly running. Okay, like this. A single midrib, see this, and veins are all running parallelly. Yes, of course, here veinlets are going to be inconspicuous, means they are not going to be visible. Okay, veinlets are not going to be formed as such, but the veins would run parallelly. Here again, we have again multicostate parallel, convergent and divergent. You know the meaning very well by now. So convergent will be all the midribs will be running towards each other like in bamboo, and if they run away from each other, that will be divergent like in fan palm. So that is regarding venation in leaves. Next, let us discuss types of leaf. So now let us discuss regarding the types of leaf. Okay. See, there are two types of leaf, simple and compound. Simple leaf. Suppose this being a leaf, right? Here you can see that the margin of the leaf is entire without any cuts or incisions, isn't it? So when a leaf has an entire margin which is not having any cut or incision, that is known as simple leaf. Also in another way, look at this diagram. In this leaf, the lamina, the margin it shows certain incisions, right? But the incision, does it reach up to the midrib? No. So in this case as well, we can call it a simple leaf. So in that case, what would be the definition then? A leaf in which the margin is entire, or if incision is present or incised, the incision do not touch the midrib. This is very, very important. Alright. So simple leaf means a leaf where the margin will not show any incision, it will be entire, or else if the incisions are present, that would not come and touch the midrib. Alright. Now moving to the compound leaf. Compound leaf means here the leaf will be, the lamina will show incisions in a manner, the lamina of the leaf will show incisions in a manner that the entire leaf will be completely broken into distinct leaflets. Okay, the entire lamina will be incised, and so that the whole lamina will be broken into small leaflets like this. The most common which all of you might have seen is neem, isn't it? The neem leaf is going to be divided into so many small leaflets, right? So that is going to be a compound leaf. Fine. Now compound leaf can be again of two types. Alright. Pinnately compound and palmately compound. First, pinnately compound. In pinnately compound leaf, this being the structure of the leaf is going to arise like this. Means the lamina is divided into small leaflets, or we also can call it a pinna. These small leaflets can be called as pinna. Okay, and all the pinna, they will remain attached at a common point, right? The point of attachment of all these pinna, that is known as rachis. So pinnately compound leaf means here the lamina will break down into small leaflets or pinna, and all the pinna will remain attached at a rachis. Alright, so presence of rachis is the most important characteristics of pinnately compound leaf. Alright, now pinnately compound leaf can further be of four types. First, unipinnate. In unipinnate, the midrib of the leaf directly will convert into rachis and it will bear the small leaflets or pinna. Okay, so this being the midrib of the leaf, which has converted into a rachis, and it is directly holding the pinnas. So now the unipinnate leaf can again be of two types. Peripinnate or imperipinnate. Peri means here pair. Okay, pair. So here the leaflets will remain in pair. Okay, so that means here the number of pinna will be in even number. They will remain in pair. Or we can also say that the terminal pinna, here one pinna was supposed to be there, this terminal pinna is going to be absent. So how do you define it? Peripinnate? The number of pinna will be in even number, or they will be in pair, or the terminal pinna will be absent. Example is cassia and tamarind. Okay. Now, imperipinnate means the number of pinna will be in odd number. Or you can also say that the terminal pinna is present. Okay, terminal pinna is present or it is in odd number. The number of pinna is in odd number. In both way we can call it imperipinnate. Example is rose and neem. Alright. Now bipinnate. See, in bipinnate, this being the midrib, suppose, which has been converted into a rachis, isn't it? If the rachis directly bears the pinna, that will become unipinnate. But if the rachis bears first order of branching and this branch bears the pinna, okay, directly in the rachis, the pinna are not attached. The pinnas are attached where? In the first order of branching. Then we will call it bipinnate, as if it is twice pinnate. Okay. So example will be acacia and mimosa. Fine. Now, next is tripinnate. So by now you can obviously understand what would be tripinnate. This suppose is the midrib or the rachis. Okay, this being the rachis, this is the first order of branching. This would be the second order of branching. And here there will be pinna. So pinna here is going to be attached in the branches which will further arise from the secondary branch of the rachis. So we can say in the simplest way we can say that tripinnate means thrice pinnate. Okay. Example is moringa and melia. Fine. Last is D compound. In D compound, it is more than thrice pinnate. That means sometimes what happens here, the lamina is completely, or the formation of lamina is completely suppressed. The rachis being so many times it will form branching that the branches itself will flatten and they will start performing photosynthesis. So lamina is absent, the branches of the rachis will become flattened and perform photosynthesis. Alright, so that's why we call it D compound. Okay, example will be carrot and coriander. Okay. Finally, moving to the next type, that is palmately compound leaf. Palmately compound leaf means here the lamina will break down into small leaflets. That will remain the same. Lamina completely breaks down into distinct leaflet. That is going to be similar, just like pinnately compound leaf. What is different here? Here, rachis is absent. So you might be thinking, if the rachis is absent, where will all these leaflets remain attached? They will remain attached at a common point, that is at the tip of the petiole. Okay, alright. So suppose this being the petiole, at the tip of the petiole, all the leaflets will remain attached. So all the leaflets, they are all joined at a common point, at the tip of the petiole. So rachis is absent. So rachis present, pinnately compound, rachis absent, palmately compound. But what remains same is that lamina has been broken into distinct leaflets. Is that clear? So now understanding the subtypes would become easy. So unifoliate means a single leaflet that has been separated from the petiole by a constriction. This being the constriction. A single leaflet which has been separated from the petiole by a constriction, that's unifoliate. Example is citrus, lemon, orange, all of that will be having the same type of leaf. Next, bifoliate means at the tip of the petiole there are two leaflets. Okay. Example is bignonia. Trifoliate. At the tip of the petiole there are three leaflets. Example is odule or trifolium. Okay, like all of you have seen bale path, isn't it? In bale there will be trifoliate type of leaves. Next, quadrifoliate means four leaflets will arise from the tip of the petiole, and if it is more than four, be it 5, be it 6 or be it whatever, if it is more than 4, then we call it multifoliate. For example, in case of bombax. Okay. So these are the types of leaves, and with all the important examples they have been discussed. I hope all of you are clear about. Next we'll be discussing modification of leaf. So finally we have reached the last part of leaf, and here we are going to discuss a few of modification of leaf. As I've already told you before, modification means something which is other than usual. Sometimes when a plant part would perform something other than usual, we will call it a modification. Like about leaf, the major purpose or the function of a leaf commonly would be photosynthesis, transpiration, or even you can say exchange of gases, right? But sometimes the leaves in certain spatial conditions or unfavorable conditions may perform something other than usual, like they might perform defense or storage, etc. At such conditions, we will be considered that to be a modification. Okay, so here we are going to discuss a few important modifications, like first, leaf tendril. So as you know, tendrils are soft and sensitive coiling structures, and they will mainly help the plant in climbing. They would coil around and they would hold on to a solid support, helping the plant to climb up, right? So in case of leaf tendril, you might be now thinking, then what would be the difference between a leaf tendril and a stem tendril, right? The major difference is that in leaf tendril, the whole leaf, the entire leaf will convert into a tendril. But in case of stem tendril, it is mainly the terminal bud that will convert into a tendril. So the rest of the growth will be occurring by the help of the axillary buds. Alright, so that's the major difference. Example will be peas and sweet pea. Next, leaf spines. So spines are this sharp and pointed structures which will be just like thorns. But then do remember, thorns are stem modification, spines are leaf modification. But they serve the same function. They will be helping to reduce the transpiration rate, and also they will be protecting the plant from browsing animals. Okay, example will be aloe and cactus. Next is storage. Sometimes the leaf can also be performing storage, like for example in onion and garlic, which I have told you before as well. In onion and garlic, the edible parts are storage leaves, isn't it? Like in case of onion, see this being the terminal bud, isn't it? And all surrounding it remains the fleshy leaves, right? They are concentrically arranged, means one circle after another. Likewise, concentrically they will be arranged, and they are modified storage leaves. Next, phyllodes. Now this is very, very important. Phyllodes are found in certain plants only, like Australian acacia. See in this diagram, you can see that these are the swollen petioles of the leaf, and this being the lamina. Okay. Lamina usually performs photosynthesis, right? Here, the lamina would simply fall off. It is short-lived, so it would shed off. As it falls off, the plant is only left out with the petiole, right? This petiole now would flatten and it will take up a leaf-like structure like this. It will take up a leaf-like structure. This leaf-like structure would start performing photosynthesis. Okay, so this flattened petioles which will perform photosynthesis are known as phyllodes. The last being leaf pitcher. You all might have heard about pitcher plant or Nepenthes. Okay, in pitcher plant, the whole leaf itself will be modified and it will be helping to catch insects, because after all the plant is an insectivorous plant. Or you can easily find pitcher plant in Meghalaya as well. I think many of you might have seen it directly, right? See, in the pitcher plant, the three parts of the leaf, all of them will be modified. Like the leaf base will be flattened. Okay, it will be flattened, and the petiole will be tendrilar. Okay, it will be tendril-like. And finally the lamina will form, like the lamina will fold and form a pitcher. Fine. The pitcher consists of the body, where there is a mouth-like opening present called the rim, and then the rim or the mouth would again remain covered or remain guarded by a lid, a cover. Fine. Inside the pitcher remains the digestive juices. Okay, so how the plant would catch the insects? In this rim of the plant remain certain nectariferous glands, okay, which produces nectar to attract the insects. Once an insect will sit on the rim to have the nectar, it would simply slip off. Why? Because the rim or even the inner walls of the pitcher are very slippery. So it would simply slip off and it won't be able to come out. Because of slippery nature, it will keep on sleeping inside. It cannot be just simply come out. Once it is inside, it cannot simply come out. So inside, as it falls, it comes across as the digestive juices which are strong, and hence the insect can get digested. Alright, so the whole leaf itself is modified to catch insects. The leaf base being flattened, the petiole being tendriler, and the lamina being in the form of a pitcher. Alright, so these are important modifications of leaf. With that, we are completed with leaf. In the next class, we'll start with inflorescence.